Just a second, we'll record it. Okay, so good evening to all of our participants. I would like to welcome you on the second session of our virtual program, Modern Tendencies in Scientific Research in Accounting, Audit and Taxation. Today I would like to introduce you our lecturer. Her name is Michaela. She is employed in 2 universities simultaneously in Spain and in Bratislava. So she's a representative of University of Economics in Bratislava. And also she is a representative of Pablo de Olivada University, Sevilla in Spain. And Michaela is except professional lecturer in accounting. She is also an associate editor of International Journal of Digital Accounting Research, which is a Scopus journal. And she has very impressive metrics. I've checked her Scopus profile. She has H index 9, and she has more than 200 citations on her papers. So she's very skilled in her scientific research, and she was awarded by Elsevier in 2019. So with such a great achievements in science dedicated to accounting research, I'm sure that she will present us many useful information concerning scientific research. And her presentation will be really useful for master students, PhD students, and bachelor students for their future research. So I give a word to Michaela, and please, if you have some questions, don't hesitate to ask her at the end of her lecture. So Michaela, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. And second of all, thank you very much for a nice introduction. So I think I don't have to introduce myself anymore, and we can proceed with the presentation about the academic writing skills. So I'm going to share the presentation. One moment. All right, so can you see my you can see my presentation, right?
Yes, everything functions perfectly. We can see it.
All right, great. So yeah, perhaps I can also mention, apart from being an accounting professor at the Pablo de Olavide University and University of Economics in Bratislava, and being an associate editor of the International Journal of Digital Accounting Research, my research interest is mostly in digital accounting. And I'm also member of the board for new technologies in accounting in Spanish Accounting Association, and as well as a member of the academic advisory body of INADBA, which is institution funded by the European Union, and it's focused on blockchain technology. So please, I'm going to give you the lecture about the academic presentation of the academic writing skills, how to structure and write a scientific paper, but don't consider me as a great expert or something. Rather, I would be considered as a peer, because at the end of the day, when you are submitting a paper to an academic journal, this academic journal is peer reviewed. So those are the peers who are going to evaluate you. So please take my advice, my recommendation as recommendations from your peer, who might have, in some cases not, perhaps more experience, because I'm working as an associate editor of the academic journals. I'm also a reviewer in very good academic journals, I must say, like Government Information Quarterly, Online Information Review, Accounting, Auditing and Accountability, etc. So perhaps based on my short experience, I can give you some tips and tricks and perhaps some recommendations which you might find useful while writing your academic paper. So why this topic matter? Once you complete your research, your findings should be communicated to wide public. Why? Well, if you work for a public university, if you receive a grant from public administration, then your results, the results of your work, should be of value, should add some value to society. Hence, it's crucial to be able to clearly communicate your findings and about all contributions to the literature and also to practice. And only few young researchers, as far as I know, have received a specific training on how to present their research work in a written format. You can present your research Well, I have forgotten to say, you can present different presentation of your work, might be through conferences, through professional papers or academic papers. And today we are going to focus on the academic paper. So only a few young researchers receive certain specific training on it. And they are left a bit alone to get frustrated, to suffer from negative responses from reviewers and so on. So I have bad news for you and good news for you. The bad news would be I will not take away your frustration, but the good news is that you will get used to it. It's not very calming, right? But I would like you to transmit this message that perhaps you should change the perspective of how you are looking at the rejection, if it's constructive, from an editor or from reviewers. You should take it as an opportunity to learn, because it's all learning process, right? So at the beginning, you will be more frustrated, but you will learn, you will gain certain experience, so you can improve your research and present it better and perhaps publish it in another journal, maybe even more suitable journal. So don't get frustrated. Of course, you would have to come up with some coping mechanism, how to cope with rejections. We don't like to be rejected, right? But take it as a learning process. Take it as a sport, right? You are training yourself to be better and better over time. And the next reason is that publications in academic journals are vital for your academic career advancement. We might like it or not, but publications are like key metrics to measure the researcher's success, right? So it's a reality, and we have to face it, even if we don't fully agree that this should be the most important metrics, perhaps. And describing your research in a clear and understandable way that is acceptable for publication is not an easy task. So through this presentation, we will try to tackle it a bit, and I will give you some advice how to prepare your paper in a way which is clear, concise, and it includes the elements which it should include. All right, so we aim to answer the following questions. How to make your manuscript acceptable and attractive for publication? What are the main sections that an academic article should contain? And what is the general content or what are the general elements of these sections? Before you start sending your papers away, before you even start writing, I would say, let's say that you have decided, you have written down the schema of your research, you know what you want to analyze, you have even conducted the data, you have conducted the analysis on your data, and you have some preliminary results and so on. So while you're at this step, try to think about which journal might be a good fit for your topic. And I'm getting these insights which journal might be a good fit for my topic during the stage when I'm doing the literature review normally. Why? Because when I do the literature review, I prepare, and this is the way I work, I prepare the Excel sheet, and then I write down, through keywords, I'm looking at the databases like Web of Science or Scopus, the recent research about the topic I'm about to analyze. And then when I am organizing this into the Excel sheet, so I will put the name of the authors, I would put the title of the journal, I would put the abstract, and then when I have the collection of them, I can see that perhaps some journals is repeating more than the others. So I start to think, okay, this might be a target journal. It might be a good fit for my topic later. The second advice would be don't be afraid to be ambitious. Don't be afraid to be ambitious. It should be an exclamation mark, not a question mark. Sorry. So don't be afraid to be ambitious and target high quality journals, right? Because what's the worst thing that might happen? In the worst case, you would get rejected. But in a better case of this worst case, when you get rejected, if you get rejected and you receive a constructive feedback from the reviewers, you have a great opportunity to learn from the best in your field. Like normally, perhaps if you would like your paper to be read and to be commented or to get feedback on your research from top academics, and you would send him an email, he might not respond to, because he might not have time to respond to everyone who would like to discuss with him the topic of his expertise. But when you are sending it to the journal, the editor is trying to match your manuscript submission with the possible experts in this field, and then you have a great chance to receive the feedback for experts in the field you are doing research in. So even if it's negative, it might be very constructive. It might help you to improve your research skills, to your research writing, and etc. And also, I would recommend you to look at the style of the articles published in the target journal. So once you identify the target journal you think might be a good fit for your publication, go there, go to the website of the journal, check the scope of the journal. By this way, you will avoid that your paper would be desk rejected, because if you send the paper to a journal which is out of the scope of that journal, you will get desk rejected. And this is negative, right? Because you are losing time, you are not getting any feedback, because just the editor would say, well, this is not in the scope of within the scope of our journals, so it's automatically desk rejected. And here you are just losing time. So look at the scope of the journal and look at the style of the articles published in this journal, and go to the section instructions for the authors, how to prepare the paper for this journal. All right, so here we are going to talk about the journal structure of the scientific paper. The vast majority of the academic journals follow so-called Imrat format, which stands for Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussion. I personally like a slightly extended format of the Imrat schema, which would be Introduction, Literature Review, Methods, Results, Discussion, and Conclusions. Of course, every paper would have title and abstract and the references. So let's go through the Imrat format. I like the paper written by Carnot in 2015, and he provided this nice summary of the basic elements, of basic items to include in each section of a scientific manuscript following the Imrat format. So starting with the abstract, before we continue with the introduction. Abstract is actually more important than you might think. It should be comprehensible by itself, and it should briefly cover introduction, methods applied, results obtained, and conclusions. Abstract actually can lead to the effect that your paper is being cited. Look at it from the perspective when I'm doing my literature review. So what I'm doing, I'm downloading, I'm typing the keywords, and then I'm downloading and copying the abstracts of the articles. Then I'm going to review them, and I will see, okay, so this paper is similar to mine, or this one, or this one. So I'm more likely to open, well, I would have to open certain articles, but not all of them, right? So it's the abstract where I decide whether or not it's worth opening it, right? So you have to kind of attract the reader to open your article and increase your chances to be cited. Then continuing with the introduction, in the introduction you should briefly you should explain the current state of knowledge with proper references. What's important here is to identify the gap in the knowledge that you are trying to cover, because every academic paper which wants to be published should actually bring something new, should bring some contributions to the literature or to the practice. So you should identify the gap, and you should clearly explain how are you going to fill this gap. And also in the introduction, you should outline your objectives, primary and secondary. Like primary aim, you might be, we are going to analyze what are the CSR reporting practices of Eurozone companies, or to provide the overview of CSR reporting practices of Eurozone companies. Then secondary objectives would be, we would like to find out whether it depends on the sector where the company operates, or whether it depends the extent of disclosure, it depends on the country where the company is headquartered, and these kind of things. So outline your objectives. I will go again through every section more profoundly, just very briefly explaining the schema. So we will get back eventually to the introduction and this section, right? So here, just very, very briefly. Then in the methods, you should describe in detail what you did and how you did it, what was your sample, which statistics methods have you applied, which test analysis techniques, ethical considerations must be outlined if there are any in accounting. Normally, we don't really deal with the research with some ethical consideration, but of course, if there are any, you should highlight them. Then in the results, You should clearly describe your results, your findings. So be factual here. Avoid commentary and interpretation, because this would be done in the next section, which is discussion. And give a results for every method presented in the previous section. So if in the previous section, the method section, you say that you are going to provide descriptive statistics, then you should provide the results of the descriptive statistic. If you say that you have applied non-parametrics test, then the results of this non-parametric test should be disclosed in the results. So be factual here. And in the discussion, it's where you are going to extend a bit your findings. You are going to elaborate on a bit on your findings by explaining the phenomenon, by comparing your findings with the previous research, and so on. And here also you would have to highlight the contributions of your study, the limitations, and so on. And then the references, right? So in the references, always list all the sources which you have used in your research, list them properly, use the reference style which is recommended in the author's instructions for the journal, and use the most updated references, of course, because you are going to provide the state of the current state of the art. So your references should be up to date. Okay, so now let's have a look section by section with more discussion on it. So starting with the title. Well, the title should clearly reflect the research. It might sound obvious, but sometimes it's not the case. As a reviewer, we sometimes have a template, which one of the question is, does the title reflect what is being analyzed? What is it connected to the research which has been conducted? So the title should clearly reflect the research. Then catchy, it said that catchy and smart titles are value adding. So here you have to decide whether to use the catchy, perhaps even a provocative title, or more traditional title. You can find both, and it's really subjective. It would depend on the editor's opinion, or they reviewers' opinion, and also the readers, whether they find it appealing or not. But what I would recommend you to check the target journal you would like to publish your paper in, and see whether what type of titles are there. But why not always? You can be also the first one who would introduce the catchy, perhaps provocative title in the field. But it's really subjective. And then your title should be discoverable on the internet. So too general or too long titles are not discoverable, which would cause that your paper will not be found. And if your paper is not found, is not visible easily, then you are losing the possible citations. All right. So this would be about the title. Then the abstract. As I have previously told you, the abstract, it's like a summary, it's like a resume of your paper. So you should write briefly and concisely about background, purpose of your research, methods you have applied, main findings, conclusions and contributions in some cases. Abstract, well, we are introducing abstract at the beginning, but actually I would recommend you to write the abstract at the end, right? Once you have the whole paper, and then to sum it up in the abstract. Abstract should be brief, around 100, 200 words, sometimes 150. So please check the limitations for the number of words in the abstract, again, in the target journal. And as it should cover the background, purpose, methods, results, conclusions, please note that we are talking here about 1 or 2 sentences, right? So it looks easy. Okay, abstract is short, just 100 words. But if you want to fit, something more complex, more comprehensive into the shorter space, it might be challenging, and you have to be creative and good at it, and to do it right? But normally we are talking about 1-2 sentences for each. So select your sentences properly to try to sell your paper, okay? Because by abstract, you are basically selling your paper to the editor, reviewers, and reader at the end. So in the abstract, you basically try to answer the following question. why is the topic important, why it matters, what have you done, how, which sample have you used, for example, what did you find, so very briefly your findings, and what are the implications of your study. Sometimes it's not present the last point, but I think it might be useful to include it in the abstract. So this would be the abstract. I will provide you with some example. This is one of the paper we have written. Actually, this is the paper we have won the award for, blockchain's implication for accounting and auditing. And here I would like to highlight the point. I didn't know that you would bring it up, right? So, but here I will take advantage of it, and I will tell you that one of the advice I gave you, like be ambitious, it's coming from this experience, because I have been writing this paper. It's a theoretical paper, so it's quite difficult to get published a theoretical paper. But when I was writing it, I really enjoyed it. I had fun writing it. It was like this is one of my most favorite articles, I must say. And then I was like, I had it written, but actually when I was writing it, I was kind of learning. So basically I wrote this paper because it was like output of my learning process. I wanted to learn about blockchain and its implication for accounting and auditing. So I've been studying everything what I could have found. I have been visiting the professional forums, talking to IT people and so on, because I wanted to learn about the topic. So I was passionate about the topic. And the output was also, the parallel output of my knowledge, which I have obtained, was this kind of article, or it looked like an article to me. So I told to my supervisor, who is my co-author, I sent it to him and I asked him, what do you think? Shall we try to publish it? Because when I'm checking this topic in the journal, sometimes I can see the theoretical papers, because you have a chance to write and get published theoretical paper if it's something new. So here I was ambitious, because his recommendation was, well, it's theoretical, it's quite difficult to get it published. Well, perhaps perhaps not, perhaps it needs some improvements and so on. But then, well, I made some improvements, of course, and I told him I saw this special issue call in Meditary Accountancy Research, which is a very good journal, and I was like, I'm going to try it, and also, as I suggested to you, what's the worst thing that might happen? The worst thing that might happen would be that they would reject me, and they would tell me, in the better case, that how can I improve it? And I would learn something new, which was initially my aim, to learn something about the topic. But I was lucky and it got published. All right, so long story short. And here I'm providing this because I wanted to show you like different format of the abstract. So for example, in this journal, the instructions are literally saying that provide these abstracts this way, like fill in the purpose, fill in what is the design, methodology approach, fill in what are the findings, what is the originality value, and keywords, of course. And other paper, which we got published in the Journal of Information System, which is American Accounting Association journal. As you can see, the abstract, the format of the abstract required was one single paragraph, but both of them actually covered all of this: background, purpose, methods, results, right? Just they are disclosed slightly differently. Okay, so when you look at this abstract, first the background, right? How many sentences? I think 1, 2. CSR reporting is gaining momentum among Eurozone companies. So just one sentence, setting the background, right? The objective of this paper is to provide evidence regarding companies using YouTube and so on. Okay, so objective. Then the sample. And then the results. Perhaps I have spent more time on describing some results, like three sentences, 3, 4. All right, so this is the idea of the abstract. It's a resume, it's a brief summary of your research, and you are trying to sell your paper through abstract. Okay, so take it seriously. Then introduction. So in the introduction basically would be your abstract, but it would be an extended version of your abstract, let's say. So you have to set up the scene again. You have to put a reader into a context of the field you are studying, you're analyzing, you're researching. You should describe the background, what is known about the subject, what is not known, and here is where you come. You identify the gap and you propose how you are going to fill this gap in the literature. Basically, and you formulate your objectives of your study. As I said, you can start with like a general aim, general objectives, and then break it down to particular objectives. And you should also list the main findings and briefly present the contributions of your study. Sometimes, the reviewers don't tell you anything about when you send your paper and you don't list the findings. Sometimes it happened that, well, at the very beginning when I was sending my first papers, they didn't say anything about it. I didn't provide the findings or contributions of our study. But then I was at the lecture of the editor of the Journal of Cleaner Production, which is top Q1 journal, and he was pointing out the importance of these things. All right, so you should, based on his advice, I am doing it now. Then in the introduction, sometimes there is the last paragraph talking about, in the first section you can find this and that, in the second section you can find that, this and that, and so on. If you ask me if you should do it this way, I seriously don't know. I think I have some papers with this paragraph, some papers without these paragraphs, but I would recommend you to check your target journal and to see the previous articles. This is not such a big deal, and if some reviewer find it interesting to be included, then he would tell you. Okay. So basically, in the introduction, you are trying to explain why is the topic important, why is it worth studying and being published, and you should try to catch the attention of your reader. So this would be the introduction. Then the literature review. So in the literature review, you are providing an overview of the previous studies in the field. So provide the references, so proper references. Here, you also provide the theoretical background, which means that you are listing the theories and you are explaining in which studies were they applied and what is the similarity with your research. And based on these theories and the previous studies, you formulate your hypothesis or research questions, right? So please, when you are formulating your hypothesis, this is very important because sometimes I have been reviewing some papers and the hypothesis came out of nowhere, so they were describing something, the paper was completely disconnected. So what is also important is like a logical flow of information. That paper which I'm talking about was completely disconnected, and then suddenly hypothesis came out of nowhere, not backed up with the previous literature, or at least it was not clear where is the connection, and not backed up with the theories. So this is an example. This is an extract from the theoretical background of one of our papers. So at the end, it's the hypothesis, right? Hypothesis is basically the assumption you are trying to confirm, right? So how you have to explain how did you get to the assumption. It shouldn't come out of nowhere, but a logical flow of information of your reasoning. How would you come to certain assumption? Okay, so for example, here I will not read all of it, but much empirical research has used legitimacy and stakeholder theory. Regarding the legitimacy theory, always when you are talking, for example, of legitimacy theory, reference the studies which have been using the legitimacy theory in a similar study than you are conducting. And many studies found a link between industry where the company operates and CSR reporting practices. Okay, so many studies using perhaps different samples, not perhaps, but using different samples, different methods, but they found a link between the industry where the company operates and CSR reporting. So there is the connection with my study, right? I'm using different sample, different methods, but I might assume that I would find the same. So based on this assumption, backed up, I am preparing the hypothesis. And the methods. So in the method section, you would basically have to provide information about your sample, data collection, how the data collection has been done. Was it done manually? Was it done? Was it automated? You should introduce the variables, dependent, independent variables. What are they called? Not check variables. No, it will come to my mind later. Control variables. Okay, so dependent, independent, control variables, if there are any. And also, you should explain all the statistical methods which you have applied. And what's very useful here, it would be that you should also provide a reference of the previous studies which have used your or similar methods or the same methods. By this, you are justifying why you are using this method in your study, if there's some similarity between your studies, right? So this is about methods. Don't you can also provide it. I mean, of course, you would provide narratives about sample data collection, about variables. You can use the tables here and also figures. Like for example, here we use the figure in one of our articles by which we wanted to graphically describe how the automated content analysis has been conducted. So for this automated content analysis, we have done some articles by manual content analysis, and this was automated. So we use the Python program to scrap the information from the Twitter. You know, Twitter it's quite open, so you can do all these nice things on it. On Facebook, you wouldn't be able to do that. There's some barriers and so on, so you can't scrap the content. We have created CSV document or format, which has been later used in our program. And in our program, we use the TM package, where we create a dictionary, we refine the categories, and we classified the tweets by, I think the classification of tweets was whether they were environmental, social, marketing, and these kind of things. Okay, so we found it complicated to describe it narratively, and we came up with this schema, which was well appreciated by the reviewers, by the way. So there's an example of the graphical representation of in the method section, and results and findings, next section. So as I said previously, here you should report on the results obtained. So be clear, be factual. Okay, explanations and comparisons with previous research will be provided in the following section, the discussion section. And here it's the place where you can and you should use tables and figures, right? So don't forget, be factual. All the explanations, all the comparisons with previous research should be done in the next session. Okay, and use tables and figures to support your description. So this is the example. Okay, it looks a bit boring, yeah, but then if it's supported with the tables and figures, it's much clearer, much easier to read, right? But as you can see, very factual here. Countries with the highest average index were Spain, Finland, Greece, etc. You know, so these kind of things. And then we are going to talk about why, if different studies found different results and so on, but in the next session, not in the results. And that section would be discussion. So here is where you discuss your findings. So compare your findings with the previous research, try to formulate explanations for discrepancies, and use the references. When you're comparing your studies with the previous research, use the references. And also make connections between the theories that you have applied. You know, so all the articles should be one coherent whole. It should be connected, it shouldn't be scattered, right? So it should be connected. So make connections. If you introduce certain theories, make the connection to these theories at the end, right? Are your findings supporting the theories? It might not be the case. You might come up with something new. You might say, well, your research doesn't support, or it's not in compliance with what this theory says. You can provide possible explanation for it, or you can claim that more research is needed in this field, right? You can acknowledge your limitations of your study. So the example of the discussion, you know, so for example, one of the factors we have, variables we have analyzed, this was the control variable, size of the company, you know, so we are pointing out that size of the company has been used in a number of studies as a control variable that has an influence on the CSR disclosure. And these are the previous studies, right? So we are comparing what we have found and what are there. Well, our study, I think it shows that there was no relationship, right? Then if there another factor was the financial variable, profitability of the company, and we are discussing here that the previous research is contradictory. Some research found that there is some correlation, the other research found that there is no correlation. Okay, so we are opening this debate and providing what we have found to the debate, to what we have added to the debate. And the next section would be conclusions, right? So here, point out again the importance and purpose of your study. So why is it worth studying it? Why this study is important? Why this topic is important? Summarize your main findings. Here is where you should list the contributions of research for theory and or practice. And you should also acknowledge your limitations, the limitations of your study. For example, we have found this and that, but we have used only a limited sample. And then you can outline possible future research in the field by suggesting to extend the sample, right, for the analysis, for example. So point out the importance of your study, summarize your main findings, list contributions of your research, very important, limitations, and outline possible future research in the field. Okay, so here the importance of your study, of the study, why we think it's important, it's worth studying, the main findings, contributions, one paragraph related to limitations, and one paragraph or two related to the possible future research in this field. And additional writing tips. So I find this article very interesting. Brennan. Okay, so here you have the reference, and he lists like 100 research rules of the game. I picked some of them, which I found most interesting. And I think I have added some of them. Of course, I have added this one, be passionate and curious, because it just worked for me. Then the rest, I think, are his, perhaps. Yeah, well, doesn't matter. So we can go there and you can see different tips and tricks. One of these would be write quickly. I think it's very useful. Write quickly, quick and dirty. He means by it, I assume that he means by it that let it flow. So when you feel creative, let it flow and don't worry about refining it, because then you lose the flow of creativity, right? You know how it is. And so let it flow and then refine it and edit multiple times, not just once, but multiple times. This was one of the mistakes I was doing at the very beginning when I wrote my first papers. Perhaps I wasn't that passionate about the first paper I have written, so it was harder than if you are passionate about the topic to write it. And I remember, and when I finished the draft, I handed it to my supervisor, and he was always, of course, providing me the feedback, and he was cutting some sections or parts and so on, and then I had to rewrite it. And once I finished this rewriting, I was like, I don't want to see it again. I don't want to read it. I just don't want to read it again. I can't, So yeah, so this was not a good approach. So you should refine and edit it multiple times. Okay. And then think globally. So when you are writing, think that your audience is global, right? So you have to adjust your rhetoric that you are according to it, right? So you're not talking to some local people, but you talk to global audience. And what's very important here is know your audience. So write persuasively for your target audience. But also here, it's not only about writing persuasive, but it's knowing your audience, which means that if you choose a certain journal, especially in my field, in the field of the research where I work, it happens because I'm focusing on the digital accounting. So there is a mixture of these topics, right? The digital, the IT, and accounting. So actually, the first version of my paper, of this blockchain paper, was too technical. Why? Because I was reading everything what I have learned. So this master thesis approach shouldn't be applied, and perhaps it was too technical for the journal I have decided to publish it in, which was accounting journal. So the reviewers told me, well, this part is too technical. Please write it more easily. Don't use so many IT terms and so on, right? So know your audience. But if you have a good reviewers, you get a constructive criticism that it can be fixed, right? Just you can know this in advance. It's always beneficial. Then write clearly, avoid complex words, and write concisely. So get to the point. Then structure your work in a logical manner. So everything should be connected, right? So ensure your work moves logically from point A to B to C, and everything is connected. Use tables and figures, as these are concise means of presenting complex ideas. If you can, shorten the sentences, because those are more readable and easy to follow. Remove redundant words. Yeah, this is one of my comments. One of my comments which I use most often if I see some redundancy, in the article which I'm reviewing. So yeah, I don't like it. It doesn't it doesn't appeal to me, right? So remove redundant words. Don't make grammatical errors. So for this, if you are not English native, I am not. So I'm always using proofreading service. So you send it there, you pay some fee. I have met some people and they told me, no, but it's very expensive. Like it's like, I don't know, 2,000 euros or something, but I'm not talking about translating. I'm talking about proofreading service. So you write it in English and you just get it checked. You just get checked your grammar errors and your styling, it might cost approximately £100 or something. So if you have the project should cover this cost. Okay. And thank you very much for your attention. I don't know how much time I have spent. I hope you are still here because we are online, not in person. So I never know if I hadn't lost the connection. I hope not. And thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, so please just.
Yeah, you didn't lost your connection at all. We are all here and we are listening and we are very interested, I'm sure, not only me, but all of the rest of the participants. So I would like to thank you, Michaela, for her amazing and really interesting presentation. And just to share with you my opinion, I was amazed because usually, accounting has some kind of stereotypes, like it's boring or very complicated. And here on your example, we see that such things like YouTube plus accounting, blockchain plus accounting, these topics, they are not trivial at all, and they are pretty interesting, and they are amazingly interesting. It's not about fixed assets or inventories, but
Yeah.
but something very actual and something really amazing. So my compliments for your choice of such not trivial topics in accounting.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
You know that the reason for that was that you always, if you want to get published, you always should try to come with something new, which is quite difficult, right? So always check what are the trends right now, and try to get on the train.
Yes, and actually, I would like to start with questions, and maybe some of our participants also have some questions. Uh, my question connected with the choice of such a trend. Could you please share with us some other ideas or tips about some topics that can be as interested as blockchain or YouTube or some other tips?
Yeah, I think, well, it's not really new. It has been out there and there are publication even over the last decade, but it's still up to date, I would say. Artificial intelligence, for sure, big data still, Internet of Things, and these kind of things. But blockchain, I'm also working on one project. This is a European project, and it's about blockchain, how to develop skills for blockchain. And one of the objectives of this project was to write a report. I was actually writing that report, and we were analyzing the current job market for the blockchain. And it looks like there is an increased number of the blockchain job offers, but the companies struggle to get experienced people. So I think blockchain is it's still new, of course. It's elaborating. There's a lot of projects. So I think blockchain is one of the most interesting topics right now, I would say. Blockchain, artificial intelligence in accounting, and auditing. But I'm more focused on accounting.
Mm-hmm.
And accounting. I'm taking accounting as in I understand accounting in this context as a wider term, so which includes reporting as well, right? So corporate reporting as a part of the accounting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I have one more question. What other tips or secrets, let's say, can be used to promote your research? I mean, of course, the topic itself, of course, the quality of the research itself, surely, obviously, but I don't know, maybe there are some tips on how to promote some platform or some special types, I don't know, some events or something.
Yeah, I think I'm not the right person to answer it because I didn't even know what's my age factor. So I'm really focused on what I'm doing when I'm enjoying it, and I don't really care. Perhaps I should care about promoting myself more, perhaps. But I think you can start writing a blog or these kind of things, which I don't have time to do. But as you said, your research itself, your publication itself, if it's published in the top journal, it will make you visible. If it's published in Q1, Q2, it will make you visible, so you don't need any artificial promotions. And I know people who are like guru in artificial intelligence in auditing, and they're not doing this kind of things like self-promotion or something. They're actually very humble, but their research talks about it.
So actually the secret is to provide high quality research and it will be promoted by itself automatically.
I think so, but perhaps I'm not right. I might not be right. So this is
Okay,
my
thank you.
opinion.
Maybe there are some other questions from our participants. So please don't hesitate to ask Michaela your questions.
Yes, please, I'm here.
Okay, I guess that our audience is also as humble with their questions. And actually, thank you for your presentation, and you gave us food for thought. And within the scope of accounting and within the scope of new research topics. So I would like to thank you one more time. And actually, if we don't have any other questions, it's time to say goodbye and see you next time, next week, with our next lecturer, Miloš Tumpak, who will present his presentation, his topic, and his research interests. And for now, thank you all of the participants for attention, and see you next time.
Thank you very much again for inviting me. It was a pleasure.